Hi, everyone. How's it going? Hope you've been having a great I/O so far. Anyone go to the Kygo concert last night? Yeah? It was a lot of fun. So I'm Ani. I'm a product manager on the Chrome team, and I'm really excited to talk to you today about the physical web, which is a lightweight way to bring interactivity to everyday objects and environments. So this talk will cover three things. One, I'll tell you a little bit about what the physical web is and how it works. Two, I'll give you a flavor for how developers are using the physical web today and how you can get started with it. And finally, my colleague Scott's going to come up on stage to tell you a little bit about where we're headed. But first, I want to start with a story. So I love museums, especially art museums. But one of the most frustrating things at a museum is when I'm looking at an exhibit, but I want to learn more about what I'm looking at. And if there's not a description posted, right next to the exhibit, this can be kind of a frustrating experience today. Maybe when I walk into the lobby of a museum, there's posters everywhere that tell me to install an Android app or an iOS app to learn more about what I'm looking at, but this is kind of frustrating because I have to do work the very first time I walk into a museum. And why should I have an app sitting around on my device when I'm probably not going to come back to this museum? Maybe there are QR codes peppered throughout the exhibits alongside the art, but that's again kind of annoying because I need to fumble around on my phone to find the QR code scanner app and walk up really close to the art, and it's no fun. I would love it if this information were just there at my fingertips. So museums are one thing, but there's all sorts of other contexts in which you might want to interact with your environment, whether it's other objects or other places. Now, today, there aren't too many of these kinds of contexts, and they tend to be associated with things that we call smart devices, maybe a smart TV or a smart refrigerator, these big personal electronics that we might have in the home. It's not a big deal to download an app when we purchase them and do initial setup work. There's not a lot of friction because there's not too many interactions we need to take. But if we look at Moore's law in action over the past few decades, we know that with declining hardware costs, there's going to be a lot more of these kinds of devices on the horizon. And we're already starting to see some of these, from things like smart locks to smart washing machines. Now, fast forward a few years, and the number of these devices is simply going to explode. From things like smart parking meters to coffee shop interactions to kitchen appliances, there's going to be all sorts of devices and locations where I'll want to interact. And for this, we'll need a new kind of interaction paradigm that scales to a low-friction experience, where I don't have to do work before I engage in my interaction. Now, let's go back to our museum example. What if instead of me going and doing setup work or having to install something when I walk up to the exhibit, it could just broadcast something directly to me? What if I don't have to do any work, but I get the information I need when I want it and where I want it? So it turns out that this isn't just theoretical. It's possible today using the physical web. So what is the physical web? Well, our mission is to enable you to walk up and be able to use anything. Our core value proposition is that when you walk into an environment, you can very easily see a list of URLs associated with the space around you. So you know what you can interact with, what objects and locations and devices in the area that you can interact with. It's ultimately just built on top of the web, which means two key things in this context. One, it means that URLs are the fundamental unit of interaction. So every device, every location, every object can have a URL associated with it that's broadcasting to your device. But two, it also means that it's open, which means that anyone can get started with it without asking for permission, from the smallest hacker developer to large company. Now, I want to tell you more about sort of what this looks like and how it's used, but first, let's give you a glimpse of how it might look. Uh-oh. I swear this is not the end of the presentation. There we go. So imagine that you're in a space where there might be something like a vending machine, and there's a URL associated with the vending machine that you want to be able to really easily interact with. So you might walk in, the vending machine could just be broadcasting a website, and you'll see it appear on your device. And this is a concept of how this might look, but we'll show you some more real-world, realistic applications as well today that are in use. Now, how does the physical web actually work? Trying to advance the slides.
Be right with you, Ani.
Sure. There we go. Perfect. So at its core, the physical web is made up of three things. So 1, Bluetooth low energy beacons. 2, a scanning service that actually sits on your device that can scan for and decode these URLs. And 3rd, a proxy service. So let's unpack each of these. So the first phase of the physical web is Bluetooth low energy beacons. They're placed in the environment. So what are Bluetooth low energy beacons? These are relatively inexpensive, low-powered, multi-battery year life devices that can broadcast content over Bluetooth. So last year, Google released an open specification called Eddystone, which defines a format for communication for how beacons can broadcast content into the environment. I'm excited that since the announcement of Eddystone today, there's over 30 manufacturers that make Eddystone beacons that you can buy. Now, one of the properties of an Eddystone beacon is that it can broadcast a URL using the Eddystone URL frame format, meaning that a URL can be encoded and placed directly on the beacon and broadcast into the space. So that's the first phase, beacons out in the wild, broadcasting websites. Now, the second phase is that there needs to be something on your device that can actually scan for, decode, and display these URLs to the user. And using low-level iOS and Android platform scanning APIs, any developer can create a scanning utility that can display these physical web URLs. But we wanted to make this really easy for users to get started today using the physical web without having to install or download something new. So what we're doing on the team is encouraging lots of apps to actually incorporate scanning into the application itself. And so our team is the Chrome team, and we work on bringing physical web support into Chrome. And I'll show you a little bit later what this Chrome experience looks like. But what makes me really excited is that it's not just Chrome that's involved with the physical web. We work closely with Opera, which announced support for the physical web in the labs version of their release last October. And Samsung is exploring ways to surface physical web results in the Samsung S browser. And if you were yesterday, if you attended the Nearby talk, you might have seen that Nearby Notifications is a new Android surface to showcase physical web results. So really excited to see all this momentum in the ecosystem and see many different types of apps adopt and embrace physical web support baked in. Now, the third phase of the physical web is the proxy service, which is a server-side service that sits in between Bluetooth low energy beacons and the scanners that appear on users' device. And this proxy plays two very important roles. So the first is that it keeps users safe. It makes sure that malicious URLs that might be broadcast over Bluetooth low energy beacons never ultimately show up on users' devices. But secondly, and increasingly importantly, the proxy actually ranks and sorts the URLs that users ultimately see. You can imagine a world where there might be a lot of these beacons scattered in the environment. Users might see a long list of URLs. And the user shouldn't have to choose which one is most important to them or relevant to them at that point in time. The proxy can play this role in doing the sorting. And in the ethos of the physical web being designed as an open ecosystem, the proxy is an interoperable piece of the system. So users can ultimately choose whether or not to incorporate it into their physical web experience. So let's show you a little bit about what this might look like in practice. So last year, we on the Chrome team announced support for physical web on iOS. And this is our way of signaling to the broader ecosystem that, hey, the physical web is something that Google does truly embrace. If you have an iPhone today, you can actually set this up by adding the Chrome widget to the Today view of iOS, where you can simply opt in to the experience, and anytime you swipe down onto the Today view, you'll be able to see the website appear. So again, in our vending machine example, this is just a GIF of this in action. You swipe down, and you see the URL being broadcast by the vending machine. But what I'm really excited about is that 2 months ago, we announced support for Chrome on Android integration with the physical web. And we're really proud of this implementation because it really takes advantage of some of the cool things that you can do with the Android platform. One of the main properties here is that we surface these physical web results via what we call a low priority notification, a notification that looks and acts like any other notification, but doesn't actually vibrate the user's device. And so this is a key principle because we don't want to create a world where every time you walk by a beacon, your phone goes off. No one wants to deal with that. We want to make it so that the websites are available for you to access, to see these results, when users proactively ask for it. So what this might look like in practice is, again, with our vending machine example, it's another GIF of this in action. You swipe down, and you'll see the notification sitting there in your notification tray. You tap on it, It starts scanning for nearby URLs, and it displays it right there. And so again, if you have an Android device today and you turn on Bluetooth, you'll be prompted to opt into the physical web whenever you first walk by a beacon. And you'll be able to take part in this experience today. And actually, we want to make it really easy for folks to see what this looks like at I/O. So throughout I/O, we've deployed physical web beacons that are actually broadcasting the I/O schedule so that you have the schedule at your fingertips no matter where you are. Also within individual rooms, we have Spaces URLs, which is a new product that Google launched on Monday that make it really easy for you to interact with other people in a certain session space. So I encourage you to check out the physical web on an iPhone or an Android device. But of course, something like the physical web is perhaps best illustrated in person. So what we're going to do now is a technology demo to show you how this might work. So Scott's coming up and setting up a candy machine that we have right here. And so the experience we're going to show you, we can switch to the Wolf Vision, is what it might look like for me to actually interact with a device like that. You know, a device that's just kind of out in the wild, not one that I might have seen before, something that I want a friction-free, quick interaction with. So now I'm going to switch over to my phone. And I have physical web enabled, so let's see if I can discover that URL. So I'll simply swipe down, tap on the physical web notification. Looks like a lot of people here are broadcasting physical web URLs. That's awesome. I'll scroll down, and look at that. I see the candy machine that's broadcasting a website. So I'll tap on it. And at this point, the physical web is done. All it did was enable friction-free, quick interaction to get to a website without me having to know what to go to. But here's where the web really starts shining. You know, some of the cool new things that the web can do are being featured throughout I/O, but I want to tell you about one thing in particular, which is called Web Bluetooth. It's the ability for a website to connect directly to a device over Bluetooth. So that candy machine actually doesn't have any internet connectivity. It's just emitting content over Bluetooth. So if I connect to it, I can now just walk up and get some candy. There we go. Look at that. Just walk up and use. And so that's just a sample for what are some of the cool things that you can do with the physical web. And of course, it's a technology demo. And things like this aren't necessarily experiences that you're going to use in the world today. But what I am excited about is that developers, both large and small, are using the physical web in all sorts of creative ways today. And I want to give you a flavor for what a couple of these experiences look like. So first, I want you to imagine that you're in London. You know, let's say you're a visitor to London, and you're hurriedly trying to get onto a bus. You know, you're boarding a bus stop. Isn't that funny? See, it's so easy to use. Anyone can use it. We'll turn it on after. So imagine you're in London. You know, you're a traveler to London. You're trying to get onto a bus, and you're really stressed out because you don't know when your bus is going to arrive at the stop that you want to get off at. You know, today there's not necessarily a great solution to this problem. You probably need to find the right website to go to. Maybe you're hurriedly trying to find the right app to download, but you're a traveler. Like, you don't have to worry about this. So what you can do with the physical web today, and this is an experience that's live in London as of a month ago, is that you can get into a public bus, swipe down and see a physical web notification, because there's beacons deployed inside of these buses, tap on the website being broadcast by the physical web beacon, and get taken to a web application that shows you real-time estimated traffic data. And again, one of the cool new things that the web can do is actually send you push notifications. So even when you don't have your phone screen turned on or your browser's not open, the website can send you a notification. So you could do something like, hey, notify me when I get to a particular stop that I want to get to, and put your phone away. And your phone will just send you a notification when you get there. So this entire experience was enabled by the frictionless discovery of this website. And it's an example of the use of the physical web that is especially powerful when you see some of the things that the web can do. And so this is live across 100 buses in London today. And the team that deployed it is working on rolling it out to more buses over the course of this year. But as I mentioned, one of the things that gets me and our team really excited about the physical web is that it's something that's open. It's something that anyone can get started with. And so this next example that I'm going to show you, I think really illustrates this point. After we shipped Chrome on iOS last year, we were pleased to discover 5 months afterwards that there's a middle school in Alabama called Brookwood Middle School that uses the physical web to supercharge their everyday school experience. And so when we dug a little bit deeper to find out how they're using the physical web, we realized that there are a lot of creative applications of it. So when you walk into the lobby of the school and wander into the area where they showcase the athletic and academic trophies, you can actually swipe down on your phone and get taken to a physical web experience where you see YouTube videos associated with when those sports trophies were collected. So you get a little bit more context about what you're looking at. But it's also used in the classroom. You know, when you walk by rooms where teachers might be teaching, you can actually quickly get access to notes that the teachers might be distributing. Or if you're inside the classroom using the physical web, you can quickly get access to the assignments that the teacher might be broadcasting for homework later in the day, or be able to engage in a quick interactive poll. You know, all quick, minute, friction-free interactions that you have within the school. And we're excited to see the school really start to embrace the physical web. You know, the students started creating signage that educate each other and parents and potential visitors to the school how to turn it on. And they're evangelizing the physical web within their local community, trying to convince local museums and local stores to adopt it. And the principal is even speaking at sort of a nationwide educational circuit to talk about how the physical web can improve the school experience. So examples like these really get our team excited because part of the beauty of the physical web is its simplicity and its openness, and that anyone can really get started to build interesting experiences. And so those two are just sort of a flavor for how the physical web is used today. And I want to give you a brief glimpse into a few more. So our local Bay Area basketball team, Golden State Warriors, who won last night, they use the physical web. Yeah, there we go. We could probably pause a little bit longer for that. They actually deploy the physical web at Oracle Arena, where they greet fans who walk into the stadium with highlight videos and give them cool teaser content. The Consumer Technology Association, which runs the annual Consumer Electronics Show, deployed physical web beacons at CES this past January, where they provide a way for visitors to engage in a virtual scavenger hunt throughout the venue. There's museums both locally and abroad that are using the physical web to provide experiences very similar to the one that I talked about in the beginning, sort of provide this immersive, engaging museum experience. And there's a whole lot more that are using the physical web in all sorts of creative ways. And of course, the days are still young. This is still an early ecosystem, but we're excited to see such a diversity of use cases already being used. But it's not just the case that developers are putting out beacons. We're realizing that the press is also increasingly starting to take notice, and increasingly what they're commenting on is how simply the physical web can enable a lightweight IoT-like experience in a variety of contexts. And since our Chrome on Android launch, we've noticed that users are increasingly encountering and interacting with these beacons. From about 2 months ago to today, we're seeing roughly 10 times the number of encounters that users have with these beacons. And of course, you know, these numbers are still early. It's still a very young ecosystem. But the signs look promising, and we're excited to see where this will go. So that's a little bit about how the physical web is used today, but I want to bring this over to you, developers. You know, how can you get started with the physical web? Well, to answer this question, you first need to figure out two things. You know, one, what does your use case specifically look like? And two, how big of a space are you trying to enable your physical web experience in? You know, are you trying to broadcast a single piece of content in a relatively small space? And the example we like to talk about there is, you know, let's say you're a restaurant and you want to provide it a really easy digital menu for the people who walk into your store, into your restaurant. Are you trying to cover a broad area with sort of a single piece of content? This is something like what we're doing at I/O, where throughout I/O, which can't be covered by a single beacon, we're broadcasting a single URL, the link to the schedule. Or are you trying to do something even more engaging and even more complex, where you're trying to deploy multiple beacons across multiple spaces with a variety of URLs? You know, answering this question will help you figure out, one, how many beacons you need to enable the experience that you'd like to provide, and two, what your content management strategy looks like for the URLs that you're broadcasting. So once you answer this question, you'll need to actually go out and get beacons. So it turns out that if you actually have an Android device, one of the more modern Android devices, either a Nexus phone or one of the more recent flagship Samsung devices, Motorola devices, LG devices, you can download this app called Beacon Toy from the Play Store that lets you create a virtual beacon straight from your phone. So when you download this app, you can set up the appropriate configuration parameters to see what a beacon configuration process looks like, and choose what URL you'd want to broadcast, and simply go. You know, it's a way of having a lightweight way of interacting with beacons and getting your feet wet with what this experience looks like. But once you're ready to actually deploy beacons, you can go to this website right here, g.co/beacons, and you see a list of over 30 Eddystone manufacturers that you can choose from to actually go and put this hardware out in the environment. But of course, this wouldn't be Google I/O without a giveaway. And so I'm excited that tomorrow at 3 p.m. in our mobile web sandbox, we'll actually be distributing some of these beacons. And Scott will have some more details around what that'll look like. But I encourage you to come out and check it out if you'd like to play with some of this hardware. So once you've gotten beacons, you've bought them, and you're ready to deploy them in the environment, you need to figure out what URLs you want to broadcast. And we've designed this system to be fairly flexible so that as long as it's not a malicious URL that the proxy filters away, it's something that you can broadcast. But we want you to use HTTPS URLs. And that's because we think HTTPS is table stakes for the security of the modern web. And a lot of the cool new web platform features that you might have been exposed to yesterday and over the next few days, such as that push notifications example and the web Bluetooth example that I showed you, require HTTPS in the root domain. So the Chrome implementation of the physical web only works with HTTPS URLs. It's true in Android today, and it will soon be true on the iOS implementation. So that's that. You got to choose what HTTPS URL you want to broadcast. And finally, you'll want to figure out how to manage your URL deployment. And what I mean by this is, let's say you configure your beacon to broadcast a URL, but you want to change it later. It's frustrating to go close to it again and having to do a hardware reconfiguration. Wouldn't it be great if you could manage it through the cloud? So using a URL redirector, just an off-the-shelf redirector that lets you update the URL server side, you can do this. So you simply place a shortened URL onto the beacon, and then from the redirector interface, you can simply update the destination URL. So you don't need to worry about going in hardware and keeping your configuration up to date. So I encourage you to go to our website, physicalweb.org, which we just newly relaunched yesterday, to provide all sorts of demos that can inspire you, to show you how you can use the physical web, and to give you a bunch of getting started resources that bring this to life and help you understand in more detail the steps that you need to take to get started with the deployment. So with that, I want to turn it over to Scott, who's going to tell you a little bit about where the physical web is going.
Oh, thank you. Oh, nailed it. Excellent. OK. Thank you. OK, thanks, Ani. Appreciate that. Now that you guys have got the basic idea about what the physical web is and kind of a little bit more how it works, let's talk about the future. We've been very busy over this last year producing a whole series of videos that kind of push and show what you can do with the physical web. And people have responded very well to them. And these are all on physical-web.org. And they really show the kind of the leading edge things that you can do. And it really opens up people's eyes to the fact that this is so much more than just a QR code. But what's really interesting about that is that what we're trying to get across is the physical web, and the mobile web in particular, is more than just markup. Over the last couple of years, it's been really quite clear that the web can't just be desktop web. It's got to be mobile web, and it's got to be responsive. But the physical web is trying to take that one step further and make it effectively the mobile web of nearby things, so that you really can, as Ani said, walk up and use anything. And so we're trying to figure out how to enable that kind of really mobile web. And I want to talk about the future in three kind of buckets. The first is going to be web functionality. Ani kind of hinted at this as to where the web is going itself. The next I want to talk about is hardware, because this is changing very rapidly. And the final one is just simply use cases. As a designer, I've spent an awful lot of my time working with people designing new products. And usually the biggest thing that holds us back is not the technology, it's us. It's how we think about the technology. I want to talk about that a little bit. So, about web itself. Right now, it's just so easy to get started with the physical web. You just need a beacon and you need a website. I get asked all the time, I love this question, so what's the SDK for the physical web? I'm like, the web? I mean, that's it. If you don't have a website, you can't get started. That's the whole point of the physical web. It's really quick and lightweight to do it. But even with that snarky response, you can enable all sorts of really exciting and interesting things. We made a lost dog finder, movie posters, any type of information on demand. These aren't really interactive. They're just information that you need in space. Ephemeral public interactions are really good for this. So even this lowly, simple, web page, I think has incredible value. So, but let's take a look at this next example here, which actually initially came from an experiment on YouTube, and we liked it so much we kind of made our own version. If someone could roll the video, please. So what this is showing is the physical web discovering a beacon of a nearby restaurant. It's a little bit what Ani was talking about before, but in this particular case, it's showing a restaurant called Bob's Deli. And then when you click on it, it says, oh, there's 8 people in line. Do you want to get in line? And so you click yes. At that point, you're opting into push notifications, in which case you've opted in. You can put the phone to sleep. You can put it in your pocket. And then when it's your turn, the phone will vibrate and wake up. Now, the physical web as a general scanner does not want to vibrate because it's a generic service. But once you've opted in, that's a whole different story. And what I loved about this is that, A, this makes us look awesome. But we did nothing, right? This is the web being awesome. We got lucky, right? And I think this is really kind of an important point to make about the physical web, is that as the web gets better, we can just do more and more stuff. Next slide, please. So the physical web is, in a sense, this low bar. We are just trying to just give you the things around and let more things happen. So for example, there's HTML, there's WebSockets, there's push notifications. These are all like the Tinker Toys kind of lying at your feet that you can use right now to build really compelling things. And we think that's kind of fun. But let's just step like 5 minutes into the future, and we can talk about things like progressive web apps, which we're talking about a lot right now. You can use these right now. But then, as Ani showed, Web Bluetooth Connect is really making people's eyes go wide because it allows you to connect to cheap, tiny little things that have no connectivity whatsoever. And that's still rolling out, but it's coming. It's part of a W3C standard, and people are starting to play with it right now. Obviously, someone already had it turned on their phone just a few minutes ago, so you know it's available right now. By the way, at 1 p.m. on stage 2 is another talk called What's Next for the Web, and they're calling out a whole bunch of things, and they're going to be calling about, in particular, Web Bluetooth. So if you're interested in that, please go to this talk. But if we want to get more crazy, we've been having some really interesting conversations effectively within the GitHub, talking about really crazy new ideas. Now, there's no promise here. There's no real immediate things happening. But the fact that we're having passionate, fun conversations on our GitHub shows how excited people can be about where the physical web could go. So for example, the next generation Web Bluetooth is going to be able to scan. Instead of just connecting to the device in front of you, you can actually find a range of devices. So go back to the museum example. You can have a whole bunch of URLs that all are, say, SF MoMA, but they're slightly unique, Exhibit 1, Exhibit 2, Exhibit 3. We can collapse all of those, so instead of seeing them individually in our scanner, you just see San Francisco MoMA. And then when you click on it, it does the scanning, finds all of the related beacons, and says, oh, I'll show you the one that you're closest to. Or it could show you the list. Or it could show you a map. The point is, we don't care. We are going to allow everyone else to have their own experience. The physical web is meant to be this little tiny jumping off point into your web experience, and you can do anything that you want to with it. And we feel that's best because we get out of the way. And that's really important. It's kind of one of the reasons why the web is so awesome. We let you guys build on top of us. But the other one that gets a little bit more exciting is beacon triggers. So Service Worker already allows you to register for events, like push notifications. But what would happen if you could register for a beacon event? Your phone would be in your pocket. You'd be walking around. You get close to a beacon. You can actually get an event. The Service Worker could respond to it and actually do something, and you'd never take the phone out of your pocket at all. This is a little bit more blue sky thinking, but this is what we mean by the future of the physical web. These are the kind of directions we can go using exactly the same technology. So the key thing to remember about all of these is that from our point of view, we have a simple scanner that lets you kind of find an app that uses WebSockets, or something that uses Web Bluetooth, or even a simple HTML page. There's all sorts of different technologies that you guys can use to implement it, but from the user's point of view, it's just a list. And when they click on it, they just go to it. And that's what's really nice about it, is that from the UX point of view, it's just a list that you click on, and depending on whatever Tinker toy you use, you can do your own thing. And again, it's one of the reasons why the web is so great, because you have layered technologies. The physical web API doesn't need to grow, is what I'm saying. Now let's talk about hardware, because it's really stunned me how quickly the hardware has changed. Because initially, when I first started in 2014 on this project, we had beacons that we were giving away that lasted about 6 months on a battery. Last year, we released a beacon that lasted for 2 years. And now with the brand new chips that are coming out that are only 1 volt, the same beacon and the same battery can last nearly a decade. Okay? This is really changing rapidly. This is what Moore's law really means. And when I often get people say, the physical web is an ecological disaster. We're going to throw batteries everywhere. And I'm like, well, actually, it's a really good concern. Thank you. But when we get this low of a power thing, you can just put a solar cell on it, and the thing can run forever. And not only that, it's such low power that the solar cell can generate more than enough charge a capacitor, so it doesn't run just during the day, it can run at night. So we're getting to the point now where these beacons won't need batteries in a very short period of time. So this is pretty exciting stuff as to where that's going. In fact, there's already a company right now that makes a physical web beacon that clips onto fluorescent lights, and it has a solar cell in it, and it runs as long as the lights are on. I think that's awesome, and that's also why that we're not in the beacon business, because we're going to let everybody else kind of do these really cool things. But then take a look at this. This is a beacon that was developed by Google's Verily team as an experiment. It's the size of a nickel, and for those of you not from the United States, a nickel is approximately 21 millimeters wide. And it is a teeny little thing that runs on a teeny little battery, and the battery lasts for about 2 months. And they're actually embarrassed, the Verily team is a little embarrassed by this, because this is their debug beacon. They claim they can easily make it 4 times smaller, and in production, in probably 2 years, it would be like less than $1. So now we're talking about not only things that can last for a while, but they can be very, very cheap. So imagine this particular thing. Can we roll the video, please? This is a fake pill bottle with a fake prescription and a fake address and my name on top. That basically shows a pill bottle with one of these little beacons at the top. And the idea is that the pharmacist would just pull the tab out, it would start broadcasting, and because it uses a URL redirector, you just simply scan it and then point it to that particular record, and then it can just show you in your list, oh look, this is your Xyzal prescription. And then using the web, you can detect the language that the user wants. And so you can change the language, you can show YouTube videos. If there's a sensor on the beacon, you can even tell when was the last time you took the pill. It doesn't even use web Bluetooth, it can be built into the URL. There's really fun things to do here. And again, this is just a simple, lightweight HTML page. But it shows you, as the hardware gets smaller and cheaper, we can drive it into almost trivial little things. And keep in mind that this is going to broadcast extremely low power signal. So it'll only be about a half a meter away. So you have to be really close to the thing in order to get it. Next slide, please. Now let's move to my third point about use cases. Because if there's one thing I've noticed is that the world has kind of imprinted on beacons are for retail. And every possible thing you ever want to do with a beacon has got to be tracking the user in a store. Makes me a little sad, you know? There's so much more to it. So let's kind of, and it's exciting, by the way, that people are doing things like with vending machines and bus stops and pill bottles. We're actually talking to a company that wants to do this for pill bottles. And there's fun things that are happening, but the really exciting part, the part that gets me super psyched, is the fact that this can be used for personal things. So let's say that you're in a room and you're broadcasting the URL to your slide deck. Or you've got a for sale beacon on your house, and instead of having those pieces of paper that get wet in the rain or run out, they can just pick it up as they walk by. And again, our lost dog collar example. And I really want to go back to the example that Ani gave before about the high school. I mean, that just made us so excited when we saw that, because it's that kind of no permission, just go for it, just do it, is what's so powerful about this technology. So we very much are excited that a lot of big companies are interested, but we're really looking forward to these new lighter weight things that can happen. So let me show you a particular demo of something that we could do with this. Can we have the Wolf Vision turned on, please? I can't see. Can you guys see this? Good, okay. So let me just switch over to Twitter. One thing that we've written is this little app called PW Share, and it's something we've written internally, and it links into the Android sharing mechanism. So anything that does sharing on Android can call PW Share. So if you're doing a Google Map link, if you're doing a Chrome web page, anything you want to, you can share it like you'd share anything on Android. And so in this case, I'm going to go into Twitter, and I am going to tweet, effectively, a photo of you guys. So can we please, let's just everyone wave? Thank you. Awesome. I'm sorry I didn't get you guys. So I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to just say that looks good. I'm going to tweet. Okay, so now that tweet is out, and for those of you who are following me, great, but I'm sorry. Can you guys see that now? Good, okay. So now all I have to do is just click on the tweet, go into share, and then I'm going to scroll down to PW Share, and the URL is going to be going, URL is broadcasting. That's all I had to do. Now my phone is acting a little bit like Beacon Toy. Now this is intentionally set to a low power because you don't want to blast the world, but those of you guys that are in the front rows, maybe halfway through, I'm not quite sure, should be able to see my tweet and be able to go to it. So this is, again, this type of low-level, lightweight thing. Now, I'm not quite sure sharing a tweet is necessarily the highest use case, but sharing where you're going for a restaurant, where you guys are meeting later, that kind of stuff. It's just an example of this lightweight way of thinking that we want to kind of play with. So again, in summary, these are the 3 points. The fact that the web is getting awesome, and it's going to make us look awesome, and we don't deserve it. Second, hardware is getting really low power and small in really useful ways. And 3, these new use cases are going to make us think outside of the typical kind of retail example. I also want to make sure that I call out Leon's talk on Friday at 1 o'clock, the physical web make it so. It's the developer relations talk that's going to go deep, deep, deep into how to really program websites and so forth to really make this work. So please be sure to attend this. And then finally, as Ani said, this wouldn't be Google I/O without a giveaway. We want to give away a physical web beacon. We are not in the beacon business. However, we're very excited to kind of extend this open source way of thinking. So Nordic has already released an open source version of their Eddystone beacon. This particular beacon we did with ARM, and we're releasing it with them. And so this is going to encourage other manufacturers to make more beacons. This is a slightly more developer one. It has an on-off switch, which you probably wouldn't do in a retail situation. But the point is, for developers, it's really handy to turn the damn thing off sometimes. And so, but this particular beacon is handy because it also has the Bluetooth GATT service that lets you configure it through a Bluetooth connection. So this is going to be the world's first beacon that is an Eddystone beacon that broadcasts a physical web URL to a progressive web app that then uses web Bluetooth to connect to the beacon and change the URL that's being broadcast. It's kind of like a snake eating its tail. But it kind of encapsulates so much of what Google I/O is about. It's the idea that these technologies all work together to kind of be kind of fun. And so the URL that it broadcasts is the URL that you need to change it. And you just press it once to turn on and press it once to turn off. So anyway, we'll talk about it. And so we will be giving these away Friday at 3 p.m. And so please come by the Mobile Web Sandbox. It's approximately there. And it's next to the big giant wooden bus boat thing, if you guys saw that. And so we'll be there. We're not going to be stamping your hand or anything, so please be cool. You know, we don't have that many. Just please take one. The whole idea is for you guys to play with it and poke around. In the meantime, you're more than welcome to use the beacon toys we talked about. So that's it for now. Thank you guys very much, and we'll take questions afterwards as we're done. Thank you so much.